I've made a series of firework displays over the years containing a meteorite. So the firework display is a meteorite landing. So that the meteorite that's come down to Earth in an imaginary, not imagined, but imagined sort of like a shooting star, like a bright thing, then it comes into the Earth's atmosphere and it just sits, it looks like a rock. And then the idea of putting it back in the sky again, and so it gets expressed as light, because the meteorites I use are usually iron, and there's iron, it has a colour, a light. I grind up the meteorite and make it into a powder, so that adds to the other ingredients in the fireworks. And so when Maria Bolshard asked me, to open the museum, I thought, well, perhaps I should have a fireworks display. I should have a meteorite land in Whitworth Park. And the previous fireworks display I had done before had opened a sculpture park up in Scotland called Jupiter, and I'd done a moon landing there. I'd used a lunar meteorite and made a nocturne fireworks display, which is based on a Whistler painting called Nocturne in Black and Gold. And I thought I'd like to use a work from the collection to base the fireworks display on. So I was thinking of Blake's Ancient of Days, which is this fiery orb with a man with his kind of sort of measuring calipers, sitting astride, measuring the universe. And it was like the idea of man trying to control nature, and the idea of an orchestrated meteorite landing would be perfect, as a fiery sort of response to his poems and his work. And then I met Kostya Novoselov, who's a Nobel Prize-winning scientist here at the museum, who discovered graphene along with Andrew Geim, and I met him and we were talking about graphene and how it's made from graphite, and I asked him if he could make graphite, the graphite from old master drawings into graphene. So the collection here, the Whitworth have Blake and Constable and Turner and Picasso and all these wonderful artists. They're the drawings they've made with graphite. And he said, yes, I'd love to do that. So you could see his face lit up, and he thought, wow, he loves art, and the idea of being able to have close access to these drawings through a microscope and see if he could find a little stray flake of graphite and extract it from the work with the aid of conservator. He found that really exciting, because he's looking for graphene not usually on an old master drawing. And so he managed to take a sample from all those works I mentioned, and then when he had these tiny pieces of graphene, which he took back to the lab and separated out the layers till he had this one atom thick layer of graphite, which once it becomes one atom thick, it kind of takes on these amazing properties. And so its capacity as a kind of to almost operate like a battery, almost like a charge, like a transistor, became apparent. And we thought, well, wow, so this Blake graphene is still active, it could still be activated. And I said to Kostya, can you make a sensor out of this graphite? Could you make like a transistor, and could it be used as a switch? And he said, well, yes. And I said, well, what would trigger the switch? He said, well, just a breath would do it, because the material is so sensitive that the moisture from his breath would change its properties, and it would trigger anything you wanted it to trigger. So I asked him if he could trigger the firework display. So the idea of taking a little tiny piece of Blake to be the catalyst for this meteor landing, especially as Blake's poems are full of meteoric, references and comets, and the heavens are opening, and it's all about the weather and the kind of storm, and just like that idea that it could be unleashed. This little tiny speck could have all this latent energy in it, and to have a world-leading scientist to be the person to activate it. So it's like science breathing on art.